What's shaking, everyone? This is Zach Edwards with another episode of the Adventure Box Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. This is brought to you by Historical Conquest, a really fun game that has to do with history, but doesn't have anything to do with history. If you don't want it to be, it could just be fun. So it's a dual purpose game. This is a game where you can actually have fun conquering the world, or you can have fun learning about history, or you can do both. It's up to you. It's your decision. As per your decision, you're here with me to talk about ancient Greece. This is the start of a new unit. This one's going to be all about Greece and the ancient part of it. So we're not going to any modern day, and this is just the beginning. So we're going to go very, very, very far back into its history, start there and move forward. Now, we've already talked about like the Persians and their interaction, the Egyptians and their interactions, the Israelites and their interaction, the Mesopotamians and their interaction. All of these civilizations all interacted with each other. And so we're going to continue to compile all these different civilizations as we go further into history, as we're creating this. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up of what we're going to be doing. So let's go through the heads up just to get started. So today we're going to be exploring two of the most influential civilizations during the Bronze Ages. So this is after the time of the Neolithic era, when groups were starting to settle down. Greece basically came together more of a time after that, when there was more advancements. This is around 2500 to about 1400 BC. This is just the beginning of that time period. We're going to start off with the Minoan civilization. They were one of the earliest great civilizations of Europe. Again, Greece being up in Europe, we focus more on the Middle East to this point. So this is where the Middle East meets Europe, and there's a lot of clashes in this. We're going to talk about it. Now, they actually started out on the island of Crete. I have a picture of this, or a map of this. So inside the Mediterranean, so you have the Mediterranean Sea, zoom out a little bit further. You have the United States, you have Europe, you have Africa, you have Asia, and Asia Minor, basically where they called it the Near East, or now they call it the Middle East. Go down, you see where it says Greece, go down, go down, go down. This is all Greece, this area. A lot of these islands, some of these islands are actually Turkish, because this is Turkey over here. You got Belgium, Bulgaria, and a few other countries, Macedonia, where Alexander the Great came from. But we're focusing on Greece right now. And actually, we're not even just focusing on Greece. We're going to focus on this little island down here, which is called Crete. It's in the middle of the Mediterranean on the eastern side, more like through near Canaan, or where ancient Israel would be. Okay, so you have Minoan civilization. They built advanced cities, spectacular palaces, and powerful trade networks, not just between them and Greece, but all throughout the Mediterranean. They were basically the people of the water. But by 1400 BC, their civilization basically collapsed, basically leaving them with behind the mystery of and the puzzle of, I don't know. A lot of historians still have a question of what actually happened to them. We don't actually know. So actually in your curriculum, you're actually going to see where we speculate on this. So this is really fun. We actually do almost like a murder mystery, but more of a collapse mystery. You're going to actually be able to make your own choices of how it actually collapsed based on the knowledge that we have. Now, as of this point, no historian can actually tell you why it collapsed. There is a lot of speculation of, because they had so many people coming in from all different, so many influences from all around the Mediterranean, that they had no core. It's the same thing that happened with what's going to happen to Greece. This is the same thing that happens to Rome. This is the same thing that happens to Mesopotamia and Persia and so on and so forth. They don't have a core belief between all the parties that live there, and they soon fall apart. So now soon after, a little overlap, there is the Mycenean civilization. So Mycenean. civilization, which rose to power mainly up here. Oops, get out of Crete. And over here, this area was where they started. Now, these were different tribes that came together. So it was not just a civilization that popped out of nowhere. These were groups of people that came to these areas and settled there, including those from the Minoan area. So those that came from Crete, by expanding, they came over to this area and settled, and basically became the superpower at that time. They borrowed a lot of Minoan culture, but developed their own, and also a military-esque social society. They were focused a lot more on the military, I think, because they saw of all the struggles that were happening around them, and they're like, well, we're going to be ready, so they set that up like that. So eventually it became Greece, or what would become Greek, the Greeks. They also fought in the Trojan Wars, and they left us a huge legend, well, many legends, including the mythical or not so mythical creation writings of Odysseus. Actually, also Agamemnon. Anyways, yes, a lot of different legends. So these are some great. This is some great information to know about when it comes to learning early European history. Because as you know, Rome will come in and take over Greece at some point, and also Persia comes over and tries to take over Greece. Greece comes out, and mostly from Macedonia, Alexander the Great comes down and takes over a lot of the Middle East, the Near East. So we're going to be talking about the Minoan civilization. Who were they? What was their influence? We're also going to be talking about the theories behind their collapse. Now, there's a lot of different things because there's also natural hazards that happen. And then we're also going to be going over the Mycenean civilization. How did they rise to power? How did they use the bronze influence for their gain? So let's go back about 3,500 years before now, and let's explore this mystery. Okay, so let's get into it. First part, let's go into the Minoan civilization. So we're going to move back down to Crete, where it all began. So in Crete, you have many different tribes that have floated out to these islands. I don't know why they wanted to float such large distances. As you can see, though, there are different islands that actually make up the area. So most likely they knew of an island. Now, let me put it a way a lot of people that might be listening to this might understand it. Okay, have you ever played the game of Minecraft? Okay, so you're in Minecraft, you're in this video game, and you come to the coast. You come to where there's a lot of water or a lot of land. Well, if there's a place where there's so much water, you're not going to go swim into the middle of nowhere unless you are on a mission for some reason. But you're not normally for survival, which is what everyone was most focused on at this point. They're not going to go into some abyss of nothingness water. But if in the distance you see an island, you're like, I want to go to that island. And so you make every attempt to get out there, whether it's swimming, depending on how close it is, or boating out there. So they would, at some point, come from the mainland, however the tribes were traveling, find an island. I want to travel there. Then they travel here, and then they say, oh, another island. Travel there. Oh, another island. And finally find themselves on Crete. This is just an assumption. We don't actually know how that happened. So let's go back. The Minoan were named after the legendary king Minos. Now, Minos ruled over Crete in Greek mythology. Did he actually exist? We're not quite sure. But the question is, if he did exist, does all the things that he was able to bring in, and we're not going to go over all the things that he did mythologically. You can look that up. We're not talking about myth. We're talking about actual truth. So, but you might want to see some of the things that he supposedly had done for the civilization, or for Crete. Now, Crete is the largest island in this area, as you can see from this picture. So most likely there was people that traveled and traveled among the islands and finally made it out to Crete. Now, it is specifically placed between Europe, the Near East, or Asia Minor, and Africa. So it was a very, people wanted this land because it was in the middle of everything. You could actually set up a hub on Crete to go do a lot of different things. Plus, because it was in the middle of the ocean, well, Mediterranean Sea, and even if that was salt water, it was very fertile. And so you could plant and grow nearly anything that was natural to that area, or that they were able to bring from close by areas. So this created a natural harbor and a reason for people to come and do agriculture on it. So it's because of this isolation also that they held off from all the mainland invasions that could have happened. So in Crete, the only way to really get out here is to sail a long distance, which at this time, 2000 BC, they didn't have long voyage ships to go around. Now there were some, very rare. So if you were to travel, you travel from one island to the next island to the next until you got to Crete. Well, and this is the beginning of when they started up. Well, Crete became very big in seafaring. So they were the first great seafaring civilization. And this actually helped them because of trade and their economy. They might be able to grow certain things, but they would not be able to get other things. I have an image I want to show you. Well, I did have an image. Let me see if I can bring this up. Okay, so in this image, it's going to show you basically why Crete was so important. And for some reason, it's not in that file. Let me go back to this other file. I might have put them all in the same one, and I did not go there. Okay, give me 1 second. I will find out where these files went, and I'll get right back. Okay, this was the map I was looking for. So their economy and trade was basically helped by the fact that they became great seafarers, and one of the only large seafarers at the time. So they basically controlled most of, if not all of, eastern Mediterranean Sea. Now, probably their idea of how big the world wasn't that big, because they could only see how far they could trade to. But they traded as far as Spain. They brought in copper and tin from Spain. That's amazing. And the fact that we can, as scientists, they can actually figure out where these different pieces came from. Now remember, so this is the Mediterranean Sea. This is where Crete is. Spain's over here. And they have markers on the tin and copper to show that it came all the way from Spain. They also had pottery that went up to Italy. So trading with the different countries. Some things would go... Now, who says it might have been those from Spain brought it to Italy and Italy down to Crete? There is nothing in writing to tell us exactly where this stuff came from. We just know by markers on the actual materials where these came from. Because there's certain things that will tell us this came from Spain. But it could come from Spain through Italy, or some of these other places through other means. But as you can see, they have different metalwork that was made in Crete and it was sent up to Mycenae. You have pottery that was sent up to Italy. Maybe they brought tin and copper back from Italy that they had gotten from Spain. That's what trade was about. It was mixing the different cultures and the different things that other people could provide you, because you can't make everything. So the Minoan were master sailors and traders, controlling the Mediterranean Sea, the only ones. Now, as they started reaching out, everyone else got to know about them and know what they're doing and know that you could make ships, and of course would make the same. They were known for their trade of wine, oil, olive oil mostly, saffron, which, you know what saffron is? It's a really expensive spice. It's made from the very ends of the flower. You know, when a flower opens up, it has these little stems that come up. Now you see bees come and they pollinate at them. Well, if you collect these on certain flowers, you create a spice, which I bought a jar like this big. It was 20 bucks. the amount of saffron it had was like that much. It was tiny, but it's because every single one of those had to be plucked out. There's no way to manufacture them. You had to do it naturally. It was heavy, heavy labor to get those done. And you have to bring them over from Europe because we don't have the flowers to create saffron. Also, pottery, which they made, but also gold, copper, ivory. Where was ivory from? Down here. Ivory, alabastic. What is that? Huh. I need to look that up. And gold. So all different things that you bring from all these different places. Copper from Cyprus. It had the markers of what you'd find in Cyprus. Also oil, olive oil, and cloth to Tyre. And this is where Jerusalem would be. Not at the time though, because Jerusalem came afterwards. So this is something interesting to know about the trade when it comes to the Minoan. Okay, some other things to know. Okay, unlike later Greek civilizations, the Minoans did not build city walls. Why? Because they had a navy. They protected themselves with this navy because they had very little competition, very little invasion. They didn't have to focus on walls. Now, city or in their enclosures, yes, they did have walls, but not for their cities. Okay. Now, let's talk about some of their art and religion and palaces, like the one at Knossos. Knossos is at the very end of this, over here, of the island. Okay, so Minoan, they're frescoes. Do you know what a fresco is? Fresco is a... actually, you know what? I want to show you a picture of a fresco. This is a Minoan fresco. A fresco is basically where they painted up on a wall very quick with watercolors, and it still stood the amount of time. Now, it's actually put on plaster, so the watercolors sink in to the materials, which make them last longer. But there's a lot of different images when it comes to frescoes that you might find. But this is one of the most famous ones of a bullfight, one of the original leaping a bull and playing with bulls for celebrations, for entertainment and such. Yeah, they didn't have videos, they didn't have movies, they had to entertain them somehow, and they chose to have people dance with bulls. Interesting, very interesting. But this was happening back in about 1400 BC. Okay, so some other things to know. The palace, let's talk about the palace. The palace of Knossos is very famous. It was one of the largest of its time. So it was a very large palace covering over 150,000 square feet. And it featured running water, complex architecture, colorful art. I want to show you this. The first painted area architecture, basically. This is just a portion of it that still stands today. Actually, I've got some of the insides too. There's one part of the inside that's still intact, and it looks similar to this. So this is one of the lower areas that you can actually see it. So these are all frescoes in this palace. Now this palace, again, 150,000 square feet. Your house is probably, depending on where you live and who you are, is probably around 1,000 to 2,000 square feet, and all levels altogether. This was 150,000 square feet palace. Huge. And with running water. How in the world? Yeah, actually, the Greeks have some of the greatest advancements anywhere. Now, the Minoans worshipped female deities. This is also an interesting one, with many artifacts depicting snake goddesses and priestesses. Now, the interesting thing is, we don't have anything to actually say what they actually did worship. We have images. That's all we have. We have images of what could be a worship. So they're not actually quite sure. The historians are not actually quite sure because there was no writings at this time of an actual language. until it's what they call Linear A. They developed Linear A, which is the earliest script that remains undepicted today. Undeciphered, basically. They don't know what it actually says. Now, actually right now, they're using AI to try to figure out how to decipher it, because no one knows. So the Minoan developed the first type of writing. Again, Linear A. That's what we call it. I don't know why. Check it out. Find out why. They likely had a centralized government as well. They had a palace. They had people that have very high wealth. And again, this is probably where they were at. They probably coordinated trade here, administered, were the administrators of all Crete, probably. Now, interesting enough also, inside these palaces are storehouses. Yeah, there's actually places where they store a certain amount of goods, where there's trading. It could have been that this was the center hub where they would store everything before they shipped it out. Or maybe that the government took control of and put it out there. Because here's an interesting thing as well. Now, they became a very powerful navy. They also started making the other islands to pay tribute and contributions to them. Let me bring this image back up. Actually, I didn't show you this one yet. This one. They had, this is Crete over down here, but they had influence in all of these. Now, this is more than just trade. This is influence in these areas. They controlled a lot of these areas. And all of these areas, most of these areas, had to give some sort of tribute, money, goods, property, anything that they could show that they were submitting to the Minoan. So they were very wealthy and very peaceful because they were all on the one island. Very peaceful there, not exactly where they wanted their influence. So around 1400 is where their civilization mysteriously started to collapse. Now, let's go into this mystery a little bit. Now, we're not going to go into everything because we want you to read the curriculum and get to this part, because this is really fun. There's a lot of different theories of what had happened. Now, there is something called Theron. Theron was a volcano on Thera. So that was the island, or the area that it was actually in. So somewhere around 1600 to 1500 BC, the Thera, also known as Santorini volcano, erupted. One of the largest eruptions in all of history, though there wasn't anyone to really record it. So how do we actually know that? We have dating from like the ash that might have gone around into other areas, but again, more of assumption than anything else. But this caused huge tsunamis. A tsunami is a huge wave that could have taken out all of Crete if it was big enough. Maybe not big enough, but it would have wiped out a lot of different things. So volcanic ash clouds came up into the air and spread out around there. You also have what other things? Climate disruption. The more ash clouds, the less sun you get. The less sun you get, the less you can harvest, and so forth. The health of the people would have also been diminished and such. That's theory number one. Theory number two, earthquake. So, earthquakes. The next one is that there's a tectonic fault line going through Crete. It actually lies on a fault line where earthquakes repeatedly damaged Minoan palaces and Minoan buildings. So a lot of these buildings, as you saw, have collapsed over time. But that's not the only thing. Some palaces were rebuilt, but the civilizations may have struggled to recover after that. But that's only theory number two. Theory number three, internal struggles. Maybe because of everything that was happening. So there's Knossos right there, right in the middle. Now, because of the volcano going up, earthquakes happening, maybe just because there's so much interaction with other civilizations and so many cultures, there is no common core to the people, no common belief, and so there's internal strife and struggle, and there is an uprising, another possibility. Fourth one, the last one. The Mycenean invasion. So Mycenean, remember, they were up here in this area, in mainland Greece. They could have come up from Crete or had somebody else travel to that area and settled in that area. Well, they could have built up a navy and attacked Crete, because as you can see, you need a good-sized navy to be able to jump over to Crete from this island area. Okay, so around 1400 BC, they could have attacked from Greece. Their civilization was between 1600 and 1100. Did they conquer and weaken Minoan, the civilization? Or did they peacefully integrate into the culture? Whatever the case, Minoan civilizations disappeared and the Mycenean rule took over. Okay, so let's talk about the Mycenean. While the Minoan were peaceful traders, so they say, actually there's nothing actually says that they were peaceful traders. They just traded and they were peaceful on the island. Their navy, though, was something else. The Mycenean, but at the same time, they didn't have many people to attack because they were working with others, so maybe they didn't actually have a navy. We're not quite sure. But the Mycenean were warlike. Like I said, they were military-esque. They built up fortresses. They built up walls. They raided cities and expanded across Greece and beyond. Okay, so the rise of Myceneans. Let's talk about that. By 1600 BC, the Myceneans built powerful city-states like Mycenae, Pylos, and Thebes. So, with all that being said, there is a power structure that's being set up. Unlike the Minoans, though, they had fortresses, fortified citadels, massive walls. They showed more of a military-esque culture. And this is actually when they created Linear B, which is based off Linear A, and because they worked together, but they created their own language, an early form of Greek, which recorded taxes, trade, and royal decrees, and they can actually decipher this one. Linear A, they cannot. Linear B, they can now decipher. Now, warfare and expansion. What happened there? How did they expand? Well, they saw that there was contention between other areas. They also saw that at some point they might want to take over other areas. Maybe they couldn't raise certain things on their island of Peloponnesus. I'm really going to be butchering these, and I really apologize. But Peloponnesus. Yes. So they built up an army, not just a navy. They built up a navy, but also an army of, well, actually, you could almost call it the Marines. It's the Marines of the ancient Greeks, the Mycenaeans. Okay, they may have been the warriors who fought in the Trojan War around 1200 BC, which inspired basically Homer's Iliad and Odysseus, the Odyssey. Odysseus and the Odyssey. So their army used bronze weapons, though. This is also interesting because bronze is not that strong, but it's the strongest thing you basically had at the time. They did also have chariots. Now, interesting because we had talked about Mesopotamia claiming they were the first ones to have chariots. About the same time anyways. So did one of them get them from each other? Was this part of the trade? Who knows? Did someone in Greece see someone that they're trading with a chariot and say, hey, I need to do that when I go home? Who knows? We're not quite sure. So they had all these weapons and they had naval power. This was the biggest thing, the hardest thing for anyone to hold up against because navies came from the water where they weren't usually fortified. And if they had an army on their boats, the Marines, they could hit land and invade. So possible causes for their invasions, Invasions by the sea people. Huh. Yeah. The reason why they wanted to create a navy and become more military-esque, the sea people. Who are the sea people? We're going to go, well, we've already gone into that a lot. So we had a set of sea people over which we now call the Philistines, because the Bible called it the Philistines, but to a lot of people they're called the sea people. They were people that traveled all over the Mediterranean at this time, around 1200 BC, and took over new lands. You know, the Scythians, they moved all over Europe and took over certain areas because they wanted to, but they did it by foot. These people, the sea people, did it by sea. By 1100 BC, their cities were abandoned, though, the Myceneans. So they had started leaving because of invasions. They also, earthquakes and famines, same thing, different volcano, different fault line, still same reasons, climate, earthquakes, famines. And then there's also the third reason. Again, these are all possibilities because no one really knows these. The other one is internal revolts. People didn't want to listen to the leadership of that area. They fought back. So, cities are abandoned, and this basically starts the Greek Dark Ages, which we will go into next week. So, let's wrap this up. The Minoan and the Mycenean civilizations shaped early Greek history. Both civilizations eventually disappeared. Both had navies. Both traded with a lot of different people. Both had different languages, Linear A, Linear B. They both were part of what would then become classical Greece. But this would be after the Dark Ages. So I've got an action question for you, an engagement question. Here we go. What do you think caused the fall of the Minoan and the Mycenean? I would love for you to be able to go online, do your own research, read it in the text, and get back to me. Put it in the comments below. Tell me what you think. Why did these fall apart? And why did they all of a sudden go into the Dark Ages of Greece? Sorry, the Greek Dark Ages. This would then create the rise of the city-states. And we will go over that next week. Stay tuned, though, because on Wednesday, we're going to be talking about the trade that they did. We're going to go a little bit more into the actual culture and what they traded at that time. So thanks so much for joining us. I hope you have a great day. I hope you enjoyed this and were able to get a lot of information from this and got some more ideas spurring. Remember, go back to the curriculum. There's a lot more there. We just can't cover it all. We're just giving you a basic overview of everything. So thanks so much for joining us, and we will catch you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye. If you have any comments or questions, add them to the comments below. Otherwise, we'll see you tomorrow, actually. Take care. Bye.